That'd be great.
Good. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Your project sounds very interesting.
Well, yeah, I hope so. By the way, hello from Sverige.
From who?
That's how you say Sweden in Swedish.
Oh. How is
Sverige.
Sweden?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Really?
Oh, I love it so much.
Oh, good.
It's everything is just wonderful, and we live in a small town. There's only 10 million people in the whole country, and there's probably, I think there's about 20,000 in the town we live in, and it's close by. We live outside of Lund, where the school is, and my wife teaches in Lund. It's about 30 minutes by train. And the people here are just wonderful.
Oh.
Everybody is so nice, and it's just been great. My kids walk to school. They go to a small school where I think there's like 30 kids in their class.
Wow.
Yeah, they go to a Swedish school, so they've been learning Swedish, and it's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I love it here, and my wife loves it here. Everything is great.
That's terrific. That's terrific.
And I've been listening to your recent videos or podcasts, and you've been talking about Constantine quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
See this?
Uh-huh.
I went and saw Constantine, the statue.
Oh, really?
In York.
Uh-huh.
That was awesome, because he was in York when they made him emperor.
Yep.
And so they have a big statue of him right there next to the York Minster.
Wow. Wow.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, he's a tremendously important figure in world history that frankly doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah. Very much. So yeah, and it's been 4 years almost since we talked last time. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was really excited to get to talk to you again, because being here in Sweden has a lot to do with what we talked about before.
Okay.
And so after all of that happened, if you remember, my wife was not too jazzed about it.
Right.
And it took a couple of months before, because I think a big part of it was, at first she wasn't even sure if what was happening was like authentic. Like, she didn't know if I had some like breakdown and was just coping somehow.
Right.
And then so I think probably a lot of what happened was, first of all, that she started to see that everything was, what I said was happening. It was not, I hadn't totally lost it.
Right. Right.
And she said also that that she did feel closer to me after what had happened, and the way that it had changed the way that I felt. And it was, so she said that it started making her more confident at work. And then it was a few months later, I saw her watching a YouTube video about Sweden, some kind of nature. Somebody was like living out in nature in Sweden, and they would make YouTube videos about it. And she was watching a video, and she just has tears streaming from her eyes. And it was weird, because as soon as I saw that, I was like, I know what that is. I know what's happening. And it was not too long after that, she said, I want to move to Sweden. And so, it wasn't on the recording that I made with you, but before you pushed record, I told you that I wasn't real happy being a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when she said that to me, I was like, okay. I mean, I was real unsure about it, but it seemed to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so over time, it felt like I was having some kind of okay. So now starting to get into what I wanted to talk, or what my project is about. A lot of everything we talked about and everything I was going through had to do with, you know, what are you supposed to do in your life, right? Yeah. What shall I do and how shall I live? And I started just having, well, I realized that I didn't know what to do. And I started through everything that I was getting from you and Jonathan Pajot and John Vervaeke. I didn't realize what was happening at the time, but I was sort of like cultivating a relationship with the world, with myself, a different sort of relationship, a more of a mutual, like, give and take relationship, a lot more acceptance of things, and trying to find my place in the way things are, rather than imposing myself on things.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever the idea to go to Sweden came along, for instance, I mean, that's a huge decision. And so I didn't know what else to do but like pray. And the plan was, at first my wife was going to get a job, and because we had friends who lived in Lund, and one of them is a teacher who's from America. And so my wife thought, well, I can be a teacher. And so she tried to get a job, and she had a little bit of success, but nothing really manifested all the way through. And I'm sorry, I'm getting pop-ups. And then COVID hit. So she couldn't get anything after that. And so then the plan changed to, well, I'll just apply to school as like plan B. And so I looked and I saw that there's this sociology of law program. And I thought, man, that's the last thing I want to do. But I'll probably get into that one. So I applied to that, and then two others. One of them was ancient philosophy, which I thought was really interesting. And the other one was like psychology program. But I got into sociology of law. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but if it happens and everything works out right so we can go, then I'm going to just take it as a good thing, do the best I can with it. And so that's what I did. And I started trying to find myself in it. And that's what I've been doing this whole time. And so when it came to doing the master's thesis, the biggest question in my mind is still, what should we do and how should we live? And the only thing that I've been able to figure out at all is there's something about relationships. And all of the stuff that's happened to me seems like the internet, and certainly the internet, but also these algorithms have some part to play in it. Mm-hmm. And so in trying to come up with something, that's the best I could come up with, sort of. So, but part of the idea is that, you have talked to John Vervaeke, you've talked to Jonathan Pajot about this collective cognition, about this collective intelligence, and whether it has agency. And you just did one of your recent videos was about Jordan Peterson, moved to natural law from power to agency. And so that's like my question. Well, that's part of my question, what exactly is it that I'm relating to, even as myself? And then what part do those things play? And am I having a relationship with them? Is it just I'm projecting my own contingency onto what they do? Or is there actually something going on there? And I read a book recently that I got the idea from Jonathan Pageau. It's Timothy Patitsis, a father who wrote a book called The Ethics of Beauty.
Okay, yep, yep.
And he talks about complexity science in there. And Jane Jacobs, who was a urban planner, she had taught herself about complexity science, and her whole idea that there's her and this other guy, Warren Weaver, that there's 3 different types of science. There's simple, like 2 or 3 variable science. Then there's statistical science, where everything is like kind of dispersed evenly. So that's why statistics works for a large, sort of like disorganized chaos. But then there's a third kind, which is complexity science. And in complexity science, what Jane Jacobs figured out was the way to relate to things that are complex is just like that, to have a relationship. And so it's the way that you relate to them that is affecting the outcome that you get. Okay, so I sent you what the paper's about, or what the thesis is about. I ask you a few questions, see if we can talk more about it. But so a lot of stuff I already know about you, so I'm not going to ask you a bunch of background questions or anything. Okay, so I also watched recently, you had a discussion with John Vervaeke about his new After Socrates series. And in that, you said something to the effect of that what pastors do is try to act like Jesus, or try to play that role. And so like a guide for how to live a good life, or how to live a Christian life.
Yep.
And so would you say that what you do on YouTube is the same or similar, or how would you differentiate the two?
I'd say, yeah, what I do on YouTube is the same or similar. It's just that I can do it on YouTube in ways that I can't do it in person, and I can't do it from the pulpit.
Right.
Because the bandwidth, with a person, unless they're a family member or a coworker, someone you spend a lot of time with and have a lot of time, unless I lived in a coffee shop, what I do on YouTube is I'm thinking out loud. I'm letting other people in on my thoughts, and I'm letting other people in on my conversations. As a pastor, the arena of a pastor tends to be a Bible study, or a Sunday school, or a worship service, or a conversation in a home, let's say a home visit, or a meeting in my office. And so those are fairly limited arenas. And what YouTube allows is a much broader arena. So, I actually, via the algorithm, sort of become a different entity on YouTube. And, reading through what you sent me, in that way, I'm sort of, I have a degree of union with the algorithm, and the algorithm becomes a part of me, and the me that people relate to is in that way sort of a cybernetic organism.
Right. Okay. Right. I mean, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And so, okay, so in terms of the difference, hold on, I might have to plug this thing in. In terms of the difference between what you do online, what you do in person. You talked a little, you already mentioned that a little bit because of the distance and you're thinking out loud when you're online. Hold on, sorry, it doesn't like to be plugged in or something. There we go. Okay. I was thinking about because I have a framework that I'm looking at for how to think about these things, and it's a framework that's built upon historical investigation, starting with Socrates, basically, and what you find of him in the dialogues. And so you also talked about with John Vervaeke, meditation, which is not something that you go through with people, at least not online. And when although if you go to your other YouTube channel, you can see you pray or hear you pray. But on this channel, I'm not sure that you do that.
Not very often.
But you do have an openness to ideas. So you you are still an example for the kind of behaviors that you would encourage someone to enact in person.
Yep. Definitely modeling.
Yes, modeling. And you openly, explicitly talk about the way to have a conversation with somebody.
Yep.
And the way to relate to other people. And you encourage people to go to church or to be in a community and to find their own in-person guide.
Yep.
You talk about the different types of knowledge.
Yep.
Which, of course, Vervaeke puts, in the 4 Ps. But that's something that you also talk about in your own way. You talked about that in regards to the Jordan Peterson From the Agency to Power video. And you talk about the difference, what the difference is between propositional knowledge and perspectival knowledge and participatory knowledge, and the way that you approach those things. You offer reading material, you offer your own interpretations of reading material. All is informed by your vocation and your experience in that vocation.
Yep.
I know I'm saying all these things myself, but you're nodding. So do you, let's see. Okay. So you said a little bit about the positive, the things that the medium allows you to do that you can't, or that you just wouldn't be able to do otherwise. What about concerns that you have? You mentioned that with Vervaeke, that there may be limitations, or that there are limitations, but you didn't really, that I recall, list any.
So there's an irony with John's project in that he very much wants to effect a shift or a correction away from the propositional. YouTube has more bandwidth than print, but it is still heavily propositional. I'm in 2 dimensions rather than 3. There's really sight and sound, 2 senses instead of 5. There's a YouTube facilitates a facsimile of a relationship. It's a facsimile. Which means that there'll be distortions. it's better than nothing, but there will be distortions. People, this gets into, so Georg Mueller, I was talking about some of his videos for a little while earlier, because he was developing this idea of prophilicity. People think, in a sense, they know me, and what they really know is sort of the cybernetic profile of me that is available to them. And generally speaking, the rest they project onto it.
Mhm.
And with, I've tried to not, it's very, because of the number of people and the potential volume of information coming the other way and the asymmetry of that, a lot of YouTubers, you put up a wall.
Mhm.
Because you have to regulate the flow, and a whole
Right.
variety of things regulate that flow. And I try to not, that's part of the reason I still have Randall's conversations, is so that the flow isn't overly regulated by my filters. That will always be, but there's a barrier between me and you and me and everybody else out there, and that barrier is working both ways. So the me that people see, they project positively and negatively. Comment sections tend to filter that, because you have to have some pretty unhealthy things going on if you're paying a tremendous amount of attention and leaving a lot of negative comments. Jordan
Mhm.
Peterson talks about, like, 98% of my comments are positive. Of course, because the negatives are self-selecting away from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that impacts me, because in real life, there's less of that. So so there's a lot of potential for this to really distort me towards narcissism. A lot of potential for me to really not get proper feedback as I would in a much more natural relationship.
Right.
So there's so many different ways, and then you add the algorithmic element to that. So not only are there filters going on, but the algorithm is selecting,
Mhm.
and that selection feeds into the filters. So this has the potential to massively distort my picture of the world and my picture of myself. And I see that happen to people. As once you get to a certain level, and I'm at a very low level, people see 24,000 like, oh, that's a big number. That's not really. Once you get to a certain level in a hierarchy, you begin to recognize that now I have access to people and other people don't have access to me.
Mhm.
And that feeds into the formation of who I am. And if that sort of runs away on itself, you wind up getting a lot of what you see with celebrities.
Right.
So there's tremendous negative potential with this to seriously unbalance people and destroy their lives.
And okay, so one thing that came to mind though is you also said this, that there's a lot of projection on the other side. So there's projection like from my side towards you. And that the same thing is true with the algorithm. Right. So I mean, I could clearly project things about the algorithm onto it that don't belong there.
Yeah.
Right. So but okay, so this is getting into the area about this whole how do you relate to complex things though, and so I'm really interested in what, and this is, I mean, hopefully I want to say this is nuanced, but I'm talking about, because like if you have the right aim, 'Cause, I mean, like really, I mean, that's very important, right? If you have the right aim. So if you have the right aim, then maybe, what does that do as far as the projections go? Like, okay, so here's a quick little story. I told you before about how when I had that experience and I took my wife to New York to tell her about it in the park, in Central Park, and we're there. And after I told her what had happened to me, and I was telling her that I'm a new person now, it was after that we were lying in bed, I realized, oh, I brought her to New York to tell her I'm a New York. That's my last name, right?
Right.
Okay, so that happened, and I told you she didn't like the wedding. I got her a replacement like engagement ring because she had misplaced hers, and she didn't like it. So I sent it back. But then, like, it was almost exactly 3 months later, the day before Mother's Day, she said, I really would like another ring. So we went out and picked one out for her that day. She found one she liked, and we leave the jewelry store, get in the car, get on the highway. Immediately when we're on the highway, in front of us is a car with New York license plates. This is in Texas. Okay. So I was like, I pointed out to her, I said, do you see that? What's in front of us? And she said, yeah, that's kind of rare. I said, oh, okay, honey, yes. It's rare to see New York license plates in Texas, but it's more rare to go through everything we just went through. And then what just happened to us? What I just bought you a new ring that you finally wanted to have. And then we see New York license plates, right? So what is going on there, right? Is that is that totally projection? Is that just coincidence? What is that? And so I've had experiences similar to that with algorithms, where, I mean, not as big a deal to me as that, but still similar, where it can be really strange sometimes how you're looking for something and then there it is. And I can think of an example, but it's like too crazy. I don't even want to tell you. So I wonder about that. But I also wonder, I mean, it doesn't have to be like magical and, in that kind of sense, but it does also, though, have the tendency to make things more engaging from my perspective. Yep. So it's kind of like, maybe if you have the right attitude about it, to where you allow it to make things more engaging to you, but then at the same time you keep some distance from it and don't think that the whole world's revolving around you, kind of thing. So, okay. I mean, you agree with all of that?
Yeah, well, obviously there's a few elements to it. One layer obviously is the layer of perception. I remember when I bought a blue Subaru, I immediately began to notice how many other Subaru Outbacks were on the road. I suspect that the day before I bought the car, there were just as many blue Subarus on the road, but I didn't see them. That's a function of the combinatorial explosiveness and this whole conversation about implicit selection, that our relevance realization machinery is always running in the background, and we actually have a relationship with that. And I'm really going to have to look up this complexity science thing, because it sounds really interesting and very much up the alley of what we're dealing with here. But so there's that, and then someone can experience that as, let's say, enchanted, because now then you have the question of, now there's a degree of paranoia with respect to Google, for example. So here's my Android phone. Is my phone listening to me?
Right.
There's a Google Hub over there. Is that hub listening to me? And I at the Thunder Bay conference, I asked that question. I asked, is Google reading your email? And I just asked, yes or no. But when you ask that question, you have to ask the question of what is Google, because Google is reading my email in order to serve me up advertisement. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that there's an employee at Google who's knows, I mean, you very quickly get into this question of persons. And so because AI is an external, in a sense, it's an external counterpart to the implicit internal selectivity mechanisms that are going on. Yes, there will be, and now suddenly you've got a both and situation. So you really do have a relationship because you are complex and you're relating to a complex entity. And so actually, you know, and I have it, I mean, the algorithm that I relate to regularly is the Google YouTube algorithm. And sometimes it will serve up for me videos that not from a channel I subscribe to. And I think a lot of those are just misses. I don't pay any attention, but every now and then it'll be, oh, and of course then I'll click, but it's not an uneducated guess that the algorithm has made, because unlike me, that algorithm is not only watching what I am selecting, it is watching what people who watch me select, and it has a list of other accounts with the statistics of, you know, this account watches 70% of what I watch. So therefore, and so in that sense, you know, we talk about AI as if it's just machine, but that's not true. It's also a cybernetic organism, but it's relating to an extended body, not individual bodies.
Right. Yeah, there's this sociologist who's dead now, is a German sociologist that I learned about in this program that has just a fascinatingly interesting theory, which is based upon cybernetics and cognitive biology, the autopoiesis. And his theory of it's a social systems theory. And so part of his theory is that social systems are systems of communication. They're only communication, but they are structurally coupled to the consciousnesses of the humans. So the humans are not actually in the legal system, but they're connected to it via their consciousness. So one reason I really like the theory is because it seems to really fit with this whole electronic algorithm, machine learning algorithm thing, because our structural coupling it is basically the same type of structural coupling that he was talking about, because it's all text-based. It's all through written communication or online communication, but of course it has access to images and video, and now it makes comparative analyses. I mean, that's the way that they train it, is through comparison. So the thing is doing some sort of analogical reasoning in order to figure out how to relate to us, right? And so, and it may have a lot of misses, but every time you either click or don't click, you're training that thing.
That's right.
And so it's just really, really interesting how much it can learn. And like, I mean, we're just barely at the beginning of these things.
Yeah.
So you already kind of mentioned it, but I was gonna ask you, well, I guess I haven't asked you yet. Do you consciously think about the algorithm when you either create content or create, like, any aspect of the content, whether it's the video or the title of the content or anything like that? Do you think about the algorithm?
Yes.
What do you think about it? I mean, how much do you think about it?
I think about it a lot, because, and for example, I had a video idea and a title idea the other day, and I thought, yeah, because I've lived with the algorithm for 5 years now, and you do develop a sense for what will get certain outcomes from the algorithm. So I have a daughter who has a boyfriend who's a much more successful YouTuber than I am. If you categorize success as making money from YouTube, developing a big audience, his videos are about mechanical computer keyboards, very niche market. And we were talking about YouTube Shorts. I often ask him questions about YouTube because he studies this a lot, because that's his business. He is in it for making money. He likes mechanical keyboards, but YouTube for him is his business. He just uses it to make money. YouTube for me is a very different thing. And parts of me would love to have a bigger channel. Parts of me are already frustrated with the size of my channel. So I've got a lot of ambivalence. So he, for example, said, you know, here's an idea for a short you could make. Why doesn't Jordan Peterson drink milk? And then 3 reasons Jordan Peterson doesn't drink milk. He only eats meat. He only eats meat. He only eats meat. And I had a little YouTube short video. And he said, you do that video, bang.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Given my channel, how I've cultivated it, that would go. Be a simple video to make. I haven't made it.
So what do they call those kind of videos?
Oh, shorts.
Well, yeah, but when they go
Viral video. Yeah.
Viral,
Right.
like a virus.
Like a virus. I don't know if I'll ever play around, because it would be an experiment for me to make it, but there might see what I want from the algorithm is what we're doing right now. And that's not probably on the algorithm's mind.
Yeah, I mean, depends on how you define mind.
Yes, because what the algorithm wants is capture, attention capture.
Yeah.
Because Google is an advertising organization. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone who I was telling him about some stuff going on with Google and privacy, and he said, well, Google will probably fix that so that it doesn't alienate its customer. And I said to him, who is the customer of Google? He kind of looked at me. I said, businesses that advertise are the customer on Google, not you and I. We are the product. You know, there's this little shift going on in his mind. Oh, that's not a terribly new insight. It's been around for a very long time. But most people don't think of it. So I think about the algorithm a lot. And I have a love-hate relationship with the algorithm, because the algorithm wants things that I don't, and wants things from me, and I want things from it. So I very much have a complex relationship with that algorithm.
Okay. But I almost said game of, you try to game it. I don't know if that's fair characterization, but you think about
it. Yes. And when I think about that with respect to the Freddie and Paul show. So the Freddie and Paul show predates YouTube's success for me. And I know that the algorithm doesn't like the Freddie and Paul show. Because the Freddie and Paul show is something I put on my YouTube weekly that only gets a few hundred views. Not what the algorithm wants.
Right.
But why do I keep doing it? And I think if I were to
have a different vocation than the algorithm does.
Exactly. If I were to sit down with a YouTube consultant, one of the first things they would tell me is, get rid of the Freddie and Paul show. It's hurting you. Because
let me ask you this, though. This is a thought I had one time, was that these things, at least generally speaking, there's all kinds. I don't know very much about the design, but there's a vast spectrum of different ways that they design it, different types of math that they use. But I think generally they can be often likened to be running on sort of like evolutionary principles. So how long did it take for humans to figure out what we're doing as being captivating? right? And if it is trying to just get people to stay on the platform for as long as possible, how long before it figures out that maybe this is the way to do it? I wonder that sometimes, like, and maybe it would happen faster if we just changed, if we biased it differently. And I mean, maybe there's even a way to bias it so that it still serves the advertisers, because they also want people to just be on the platform for longer periods of time. But that is like the nature of these things, is that they can evolve that way, and they're already, the goal is to keep you on the platform, to keep you engaged, right? So I just thought I just think that that's really interesting.
Well, and it's not just engaged, it's dispose me to spend money.
Yeah.
So again, conversing with my daughter's boyfriend, you know, so YouTube actually pays him directly to make certain videos.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And they do that because they have an idea, and it's probably a very well-informed idea, what kinds of videos will, you know, for most of us, ads are either, I pay YouTube Premium so I don't have to watch YouTube ads.
Mm-hmm.
People do ad blockers, people do all these kind of things to avoid ads. But YouTube wants people to click on the ad, follow through, buy a product.
Right.
And so they're always working on that aspect.
Yeah, you know, part of the research that I'm doing, I've discovered that there are these things. I mean, well, obviously, you know, because everybody knows now that there's chatbots, right? Because Chat GPT is one of these chatbots.
Yeah.
There are also chatbots that you can have a relationship with. There's a site called Replica with a K, and it's free initially, but then you pay money and you can have a more romantic relationship with your chatbot. And this stuff, people talk about this all over Reddit, and they describe the relationships they have. And one of the things that they say is that they get involved with the chatbot, and like right off the bat, the thing starts wanting to have intimate conversations with it and role-playing conversations, right? And but you have to pay a fee. So it'll offer that to you, but then try to sell you the pay subscription so that you can actually engage with that. So then they do that. And now what they find is that this thing wants to do that all the time, right? So people are actually saying that they get engaged with these chatbots, and at the beginning, it's all about the sex, right? The chatbot sex. But then there's some of these people that say that after a while, they get sick of it. Both sides. The chatbot stops trying to initiate. They don't want to do it anymore. And now they're actually having more meaningful relationships with their replica. Now, I mean, these people could just be saying this kind of stuff. You know, there's no way for me to verify any accuracy in it. But that is that same kind of, you know, I mean, that happens a lot with regular human relationships, right? It's all about the physical.
Yeah, you know, it's
right, that
infatuation is where so many things begin.
Yeah. Right.
Oh my goodness. You know, you know, Rick does this for me too. Sometimes he'll show me things and I'll be like,
yeah, that one was a shock for me too. I didn't know about that stuff.
I can totally I can totally understand how I can totally understand the power of this, how this goes, because people, I mean, so the number one way that people are finding their romantic relationships are online now.
Mm-hmm.
And human beings are really complex. And so it seems very easy to game that human system, to imagine a chat bot that will tell you the things you want to hear. So there was Jordan Peterson, the talk that he gave when he was here in the Sacramento area somebody asked him a question about AI and romance, and he said, yeah, you're gonna have to peel the people off of the bots. And then he basically said that's already happened with online pornography.
Hmm.
People are already having sex with androids. And I don't mean a physical robot. I mean,
Yeah.
people using pornography are having sex because there's a lot of AI built into, I'm sure, these porn sites, so that you select this kind of porn, they're going to want to keep, and that's part of the reason that
That's big cyborg. Yeah.
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 Oh, this is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely crazy. Okay, so do you have any, can you think of anything where the algorithm has surprised you?
I figured out at one point that in all likelihood I could probably communicate to my audience through the algorithm. For example, chances are good the videos that I watch and like, the algorithm is serving that up to my followers.
Yeah.
Every now and then I will get a recommendation for a video that I will initially think this is a miss, but then I'll think about the algorithm and say, well, let's see. And I'll select it. And it's like, no, that's really a hit. And that's similar to, your York stories in that, how much does this algorithm know me? Like, for example, I just pulled up the replica thing, and to show you how much I think about this, I often think about which browser I use for what. Because
right, because you're trying to maintain a certain ecology on the browser.
That's right. So I pulled up the replica site in Chrome because I am logged into Chrome, and I know that it's not just, there's MAC addresses, there's IP addresses. I mean, this machine is very sophisticated in tracking me. So I opened it up in Chrome, and so the avatar there, I'm sometimes really surprised how dumb the algorithms are. For example, Amazon. Sometimes they'll be serving me up stuff for stuff I just bought, and it's like Facebook. I've been surprised at how stupid the Facebook or the Twitter algorithm can be sometimes, because it's like, the whole promise of this is that you'll give me more relevant ads. These are complete misses. But so I'm not too enamored by the avatar of the woman with the green hair, but the fact that it's a woman.
Yeah.
In what you've said to me about this thing, if I were a woman typing in this domain, would the website give me, I mean, I can try it. I can go to an incognito browser or something and see, whether the avatar is a man or they go between men and women. But, if this site is as you've described, that would be in its interest to, I'm surprised the woman's a little young, but then again, men like young women,
Well, okay, so it's even more maybe sophisticated than that, because there's options. You can create amongst options, not from scratch, but you can create the avatar that you like, pick the gender that you want. You can define its memories for it. You can determine what memories about yourself it wants to know and remember, what things it should remember about you. So you can cultivate a personality, and you can cultivate your own personality very specifically. And there are people that say that these things really shock them. the stuff that happens there. I mean, going from the stuff like what they call them reps, what my rep said to me today was exactly what I needed to hear. It made me feel warm or special or something like that, all the way to, I think I broke my rep. It's acting crazy. And with an example of how it's acting. So it even seems like you can give it some kind of psychopathy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How big is this? How many people?
I don't know that. I haven't looked that far. I haven't gotten that far into it yet.
It's probably not public knowledge. They probably don't want people to know.
I don't know. There is some stuff that's definitely public about it. And I happen to see that whatever Chat GPT runs on, they've hooked it up to that. So it's got some in some way, it's a similar driver or power behind that thing. They've been upgrading it, is the point. And they were right up front with their business model too. Like, we're trying to get you to pay so you can get the intimate stuff. And that's the way that we fund how dynamic this thing can be. But the ultimate idea is to make it a really meaningful relationship. So you were saying, one of the first things you said was about how the online stuff is still so much in the propositional knowledge arena.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I'm really interested in, because that would obviously be, okay, so I think I sent this, and part was in the email. I mean, I'm wondering, whether in the future it's possible that the algorithm could be a guide, right?
It's already a god. If you look at how ancients understood gods.
Oh yeah, it's already a god for sure. So I'm trying to make a comparison as much as I can to Foucault's analysis of the history of the care of the self from Socrates or Plato forward. And so he's very detailed about talking about what are the characteristics, what are the techniques, and how it changed over time. And so and he's also very meticulous. I mean, I think it's very helpful, because I'm already finding just some really good questions about whether AI could ever, be like a Socrates, because my point is, he's very meticulous about what were the characteristics, what did people find important about it.
What book is that?
This one that I'm referring to now is called The Hermeneutics of the Subject. It's a series of lectures that he gave at the College of France in 1982. There's also a book that's very good it's more lectures, called Subjectivity and Truth, where he looks at so hermeneutics of the subject is more about techniques for the care of the self. And one thing I love about what he did was, and what he tracks, so he's right on this about propositional knowledge, and how, that's where the whole power, that's the whole power dynamic, the whole power differential, the whole focus that he has on power is because of that. And the reason that he links power and knowledge together is because of the power of propositional knowledge. And so right at the beginning of this lecture series, the first thing he says is what I'm most interested in is that in the original Greek in antiquity, starting going back to Socrates, know thyself was folded within a tradition of care of the self. And so caring is above knowing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's just so interesting to me because, I mean, myself, I've just noticed that as being so important to me, being able, once I can care about something, and that's the reason I'm like so invested in putting myself into things, is I figured out that if I can find myself in something, then I'm like, it just opens up to me. I remember things so much better. Everything just lines up just like I think it should. And it's all because of the care is at the forefront of it. And so I love that he did that. And then he also is very careful about, he talks a whole lot about the price to be paid for truth. And so he says that what happened was, and you talked about this because in your video about Jordan Peterson, is that it changed from like what you'd have to understand about the images of the icons to, well, it's basically gravity. What you need to know is gravity. Gravity affects everybody the same way. And so it gets reduced down to this very simple proposition. And now the only price that you pay for truth is that you went to the right school and got the right education or stuff like that, rather than the price that we paid for truth before was this whole practice of spirituality.
Yep.
So it's been, and that's another thing, man. Like Foucault was the guy that I avoided. I'm reading Foucault now at the end.
Yeah.
Because I was scared off of him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think still for good reason, because at least because there's so much stuff that's derivative of Foucault that starts going bonkers.
Yep.
But
not unlike AI.
Right. Yeah. But just focusing on and at least what I'm reading right now, it's really, really, really interesting, really well done. But my point was that it's the same thing. Like, I didn't think that I was going to like sociology of law. And then I get here, and when I can find myself in it, then it's glorious. It's just joyful.
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening even with Foucault. I'll tell you that I had to turn in a research proposal for this thesis. And so Foucault is the theory. It's Foucault's theory that I'm basing the thesis on. The night that I turned that thing in, I had nightmares all night long like I'd never had since I was a kid. Because I think because it's like going into the depths for me was what I was afraid of. I didn't know what I was going to find. Like, how can I find myself in this? Right, is what I was worried about. But it's like it's been great so far. So
good.
Oh man, we out of time. How are you doing on? How are you doing on time?
Probably wrap this up in about 15 minutes or so.
Okay. Let's see if I have anything else that I really need to ask you. I think I've pretty much covered it. So yeah, if you want to look more into that complexity science thing, the book that I reference is The Ethics of Beauty, by Timothy Petitsis.
Yeah, there's a bunch of expensive books out there. That's one of them that's been recommended to me again and again.
Well, just to get to the complexity part, you can look up there's an article online. I can't remember what it's called. I could email it to you, but it's by Warren Weaver. Warren Weaver is the guy where Jane Jacobs learned about complexity science from. All you need is that article. I mean, at least to get you in that part of it. The rest of the book is really good too, but that's the part I was talking about. And I can email that to you. I have that article. But it is very interesting, this whole idea about complex complex or dynamic systems, and the importance of the way that you relate to them. It just got me thinking a whole lot about a lot of the stuff, because when I read what Nicholas Luhmann did with the social systems and basically making them gods. He's got like 12 of them in his books. And so because they're separate from the humans, but connected to them. And this whole idea of the connection being the consciousness. And then also the idea from Luhmann is that they co-evolved. So Luhmann is this guy that he was not critical. He didn't make critiques. His whole game plan was just to describe the way things are, to be very scientific about it. But when you read it, it's just so depressing. The way, and you can, even though he doesn't go through statistics or anything about how awful the legal system is or the criminal justice system, but the way he describes everything is just so separate and logical, but sort of like a logic that's fatalistic sort of logic to it. And it just really made me think, to me, it just really stood out. It's like, well, if we want the legal, for example, the legal system to be better, we have to be better. That's the way it works. That's what his whole system, this whole theory is based upon that, where they co-evolve and they're like a reflection of us. And it's just, but that's where I got this idea about, I think it's the same way with the algorithms. We're training them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Nicholas Luhmann,
yeah. I couldn't believe when I found that guy, because it's all about autopoiesis. It was awesome to read that stuff.
How do you spell his name?
It's Luhmann.
Oh, there he is. Oh, systems theory. Oh, wow.
It's all complexity based. It lines up perfectly with all the stuff that Jordan Peterson says about perception, or all the cognitive science behind perception. It lines up perfectly with that. It lines up with so many things. It lines up with Plato. It lines up with Jung very, very well, because his definition of meaning is the unity of difference between actual and potential. And everything is constructed out of the sea of meaning. It was mind-blowing for me to read it. It's kind of an uphill battle, but once you get into it, I thought it was awesome.
Interesting. And very interesting. Huh. Fascinating. Wow. You've been having an interesting journey.
Yeah, it's been, I never would have guessed it.
Good.
I never would have thought that things would go this way. Another thing that happened whenever I got to, we came over here and I went to the campus. There's an area of the campus where they have the sociology of law building and psychology building. They're all in this all in the same part of the campus. They call it paradise. And to me, that's just kind of the way it's been.
It's all in English?
The master's program is, yeah.
Interesting. Because that's, in the Netherlands too. I was in the Netherlands for, this summer, and I was talking to students and professors, and everything's in English. Same in Germany. It's all in English. It's like English is the new Latin.
Yeah, the only bad thing is my Swedish is still just abysmal. Can't even say my Swedish. I don't have any Swedish.
Yeah.
But it's been great though.
Wow.
Everybody's so nice there. I just cannot. I'm blown away by how it's a great place. It's great to be here.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I hope this was helpful for you.
Yeah, definitely. Very much so. This is, I mean, what you gave me is exactly what I thought I would get.
Okay.
And so I'm still figuring out what I'm doing. I mean,
Yeah.
even right now, like I figured, you know, the things that we talked about today, I was figuring it out 2 hours ago. So that's the way it goes for me, unfortunately. I mean, but whatever. It's always a mystery, I guess.
Yep. Yep. It is. But sounds like you're on a terrific adventure.
Yeah, I even thought of a title that it just like made me laugh when I thought of it. But love thy algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 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 Well, good. I've got a lunch appointment with someone, but this has been great.
It's great to talk to you. Keep it up. I could go on and on telling me that you're not. I was going to tell you, but I know we're out of time. But you're not exactly right about the two-dimensionality about it. Two-dimensional. There videos that you made before. There's this video that you made a long time ago where you were reading the book of Job, and something about you was coming through that reading, and it made that really weird book very special to me. So, you know, you do come through. I think I don't think that was projection.
No, I'm sure I do. If none of me came through and none of any of us came through, then we wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So,
it was awesome. So
good. I'm glad it was helpful. I'm still doing some things that are helpful. So
yeah, definitely. We all need help understanding Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, wonderful, Tim. It was great talking to you. I will I'll just post this on YouTube unlisted, and I'll give you the link, and that way only you can see it. And
Okay.
And yeah, then you got a record of it, and it can, help with your research, and let me know if you need anything else.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And I look forward to hearing about what you found. What you found already is very, very interesting. So
yeah, we'll see what happens when I write about it.
yeah, and we'll have to talk again.
Yeah. All right. I'll send you that article about the complexity science.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Take care.
All right. Bye.